Man, I was just filled with so many emotions because it was like such a roller coaster, as all of these hunts are. But it's just like last day, last chance, simple plan. My third opportunity at him. Third time I was inside bow range on him. Saw him more times than that. I'm like, man, we did it. Like you and I together went out and were able to double up on this hunt, and we worked our asses off right until the bell rang.
I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp, with the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
All right, we're here. Tyler, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, not much. Wrapping up a great trip out here in the breaks.
Yeah, we're just finishing up. This is day 10 of a Montana Elk Hunt, and something that been looking forward to doing together for quite a while. This is, you've done it a few years now, but for myself, it's been something that's been a long time in the making, and it was pretty cool that we were both able to get tags and get to do it together.
Yeah, and both tag out too. It took some years of planning, but then it finally came together.
Yeah, I think if anybody's watching the video podcast, we tried to display the antlers here nicely on the truck beds, but man, I just don't know what to say about the trip. I mean, really can't ask for anything better. I mean, is that your first bull?
First bull, yeah, and then year 3 in the breaks. So I think we were talking about it earlier. It's day 25 in the breaks here. Yeah. Year 3 finally got it done. And worth it.
And year 4 total for you as far as
4 total, yeah.
Elk hunting?
Yep, 1 year OTC Colorado. So
yeah,
4 years elk hunting came down to this trip.
Yeah, I mean that was the exact same way it was for me with my first bull. Although I feel like you're much further along as far as you've spent a lot of time around elk. You've kind of got it figured out. You've also been kind of picky too, which I've given you crap about, but
yeah.
But I guess it's paid off when you look at this, big.
Yeah.
Or I guess how would you describe it? Is it a little 7x7, a big 6x6, or you used to call it a big 7x7? Just got crabs.
I think we were trying to call it an 8x7 because of the devil tine.
It does have that.
So yeah, I'll call it a 7x7 all day. You can measure those. Those are an inch.
100%. I'm all for that. So it's a 7x8. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about the devil time. I'll just tell people 7x7. But,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll go with that. But this country is super cool, and it's something that I watched it a long time ago in a video, and I was like, I really want to hunt that country and spot and stalk elk. It's you just don't get too many places to spot and stalk elk. And I will say, like, for anybody that's listening here, I'm not trying to blow up. The breaks are a giant area. It's a lot of central Montana for the most part.
Yeah, all of central. I think we're talking about it's like 8 units almost, something like that. It's half the state's the breaks.
Yeah. So a lot of open country with some scattered timber throughout, a lot of cliffs, a lot of just like steep,
like upside down mountains. Like that's how you explain it. But like there's no trees. They're just upside down mountains. It's straight down off everywhere you go. But yeah, timber pockets here and there, coulees, drainages, stuff like that.
And big flats across the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought about it being an upside down mountain.
Yeah, somebody told me that like a couple years ago. I'm like, that makes total sense. It's like easy walking until you try going down.
And we're coming back up.
Yeah.
That is it's super cool too. Like this country, like I said, like nothing, like nowhere else I've ever been to, and I'd mentioned it on an Instagram post, but like a lot of times when I go on hunting trips, like a lot of times for me, it's about the place just as much as it is, it's known for having the potential for big bulls, but also it's just the type of place, like the spot and stalk style, mule deer hunting elk, basically.
Yeah, exactly what it is. It's
Yeah.
like I always make the joke the last 3 years, I'm like, I'm killing myself, like not hunting like screaming bulls and dark timber, but I'm like, there's not many places like in the world you can just come out here and see 4 shooter bulls just doing their running thing. It's just, it's pretty unique scenarios out here. It's just you get to see everything, and you don't have to walk through thick timber.
Yeah.
So it's a little win-win.
So, and while we're giving a background on kind of the area and landscape, paint a picture for you, this place is on a limited entry tag, so you have to apply for it, different than the general tag that comes in Montana. For me, it took 7 points to be able to pull a tag, so that's a long time coming. Residence a little bit different, you can get it easier, but the thing I was blown away with was the amount of hunting pressure that we went through. I felt like I was in Colorado in an OTC unit there for a little while.
Yeah, that was even foreign to me. Yeah, coming here the last 2 years, I'm like, oh, we're gonna have this place to ourselves. We can walk any ridge we want, any glassing point, and I mean, there's a couple of times throughout this trip, like we tried audibling to spots and trailheads full. People are like, everybody's backpacked in there, and like it's like this normally isn't a backcountry style of hunt. It's like, it's a lot of miles, but they're somewhat easier miles. And then, just trailheads packed everywhere around here.
Yeah. Yeah, I was, and you'd said it was an anomaly because it wasn't that way the last couple of times that you had hunted it, but I was like, holy cow, Tyler, like what the heck are we getting ourselves into? Like this is kind of messed up. And, so we came here on, day one, I guess night one, we got here right before dark so we could do some glassing and right away we had found a nice bull.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's neither of the ones that we shot, but we saw a nice bull and rutting around a little bit. So got ourselves like kind of, amped up there.
Yeah. Didn't even set up camp yet. And we're watching a bull bugle and chase some cows around. It's like, oh, this is going to be an epic trip.
Yeah. And really got us like just fired up. And honestly, that's like that area. There was a lot of people driving the roads and glassing from the roads, but there wasn't a ton of pressure at that point, or we didn't really know.
We didn't discover it yet.
Yeah, we didn't discover it yet.
It's like, it was on the way in, and then next thing you know, that's where our core hunting was in.
Yeah. So, so day one, we decided, we'll kind of slow play, because you had some spots picked out that you'd been into that were like far back in. Some you have to backpack in, some you can day hunt, but it's,
almost not worth it. Yeah.
Hell of a day to do it.
Water. That's the big deciding factor there. That pretty much dictates your hunt out here.
Yeah, I mean, this area has no water. Like, and the water you find is like
salt water.
So you can't even filter it. And that I was like, so if we were going to backpack in, we were only really going to be able to do 3 days at a time, because we'd have to pack in what was it, almost 15 liters of water each. Like,
I would say, we're pushing 4 liters a day, so it's
temperatures hitting 90 and above. So you're going through a bunch of water, you're hiking a lot. There's a lot that that was kind of going into that. So it's like, let's start off the first day, a spot that isn't super hard to hike into, and just kind of get a feel for some things and not walk past bulls to hunt bulls.
Yeah, exactly. Start close and work your way out.
And you want to talk a little bit about that first day, kind of what your thoughts were?
Yeah, I mean, day one, shaped up to be exactly like my last 2 years' experiences. Bulls everywhere. It was just like one of those mornings. I'm like, they should be right here in the morning. We get there. I think we pretty much heard bugles every morning. It's like in the dark we can hear bugles. Like, so you have a pinpoint of like where to start glassing at first light, because first light's key out here with the heat and water. So day one. I think it was 2 bulls, kind of. Yeah. I think it was 2 bulls. One had a bunch of cows, and then one was just kind of lingering off in the distance. Mm-hmm. And then, I guess we just followed them to bed, which didn't take long. Within 20 minutes of first light, they were already pretty much bedded where they wanted to be.
Yep. Yeah, and that's another key thing I want to hit on was when it's that hot, we literally had 30 minutes maybe of daylight to find elk because they're bedded down and they're not moving for the rest of the day, other than maybe shifting beds a little bit for the sun. But they don't do as much as mule deer.
Yeah, they're not leaving their pockets and they're not getting up and feeding. Like, it's going from tree to tree for shade. They're not messing around at all.
Yeah. No, that was really an eye-opening thing. 'Cause it's like, that's a long day when you think about it getting light at 6 in the morning, 6:15ish, and then not getting dark till 7:30.
Yeah.
So it's a long day when you have those small windows. But anyways, we found those. You were the one that spotted them first, and that's how we were kind of doing our thing. Is whoever spotted the first bull would get the first stalk, and then after that we'd flip flop.
Yep.
And it just so happened to be the bull that you have here, but that's a bull that we had nicknamed Fat Lip. So I guess before we even go into that, to give a little bit more background on any hunt that we go on, we kind of have, just because you're out there, you're sitting on a Rattlesnake Knob all day, you're running out of things to talk about. You come up with funny things to do, and like, I've always had this thing of naming elk that we'd hear or see or whatever, and they always have a theme to them. And this one, I guess it would be really pertinent if you were, I'd say, if you're somewhere between 25 and maybe 40 years old, probably the most. I'm not saying outside of that you wouldn't understand it, but in that age frame, thought about like in the early 2000s to like 2008 of like the punk emo type music phase of things. And so we were coming up with names for these bulls, and you named this one Fat Lip, some 41 song, because he was licking his lips a lot,
Yeah. It's like every time he's like, I think he's bugling. It's like, no, he's just licking his lips. Did that for like the half an hour this morning, just chasing all his cows. And so that's what kicked off, like, the whole nickname. So we're going to be, throwing out a lot of nicknames there. There's 2 random ones. I don't even know how those happened, but.
Yeah, because we ran out of ones that didn't really seem to make sense. We couldn't think of.
Well, I think Sunday night we named that one before we had the theme of the hunt planned. It was just 5 eggs. I'm like, he was just your average 6, like a good 6. Like upper 200s, pushing 300. But it's like, he's 5'8", he's average out here.
Yeah, he's 5 foot, like a 5'8" male, like he's average, average elk. That is true. So to talk a little bit about like kind of how he bedded and what you think about when you go on these stalks.
Yeah. So I mean, wind is king out here. You can never fool an elk's nose, let alone when he's surrounded by 15 cows and stuff like that. So wind's everything. So he bedded into this thicket. We can see into this thicket clear as day. So he's like bedded. He was bedded at the top of this 100-yard thicket. And he had a bunch of cows around him, and then his entire herd was sprinkled 100 yards below him. And then the full flaw of this stalk, I guess, is it was a crosswind, so like we were going to be flirting with it no matter what. So the wind was coming at the top of the drainage and then pretty much blowing down through all his cows. And I was sitting there, I'm like, well, he's kind of in like an open spot. Like we always call this thing, like, call it the prairie dogs. Like when you pop over a ridge, like they're going to see you and you have like split seconds to make it happen. I'm like, it's not a great wind, but I think I can prairie dog like right over this ridge and immediately draw back and shoot him because my wind would be blown down to the cows below him. So, I mean, we went on the stalk, and, I mean, it wasn't far, a half mile from us, but, I mean, I think I had to do a mile loop just to stay out of their eyesight because this country is so open. And then I loop around and get on the backside, and I'm like, it's crosswind. I'm like, this has got to happen now, or I can sit here for 12 hours and wait for him to get up at night. And half the time we don't even see him get up at night. So, I made the decision. I'm like, I know exactly where he's bedded using like the Spartan Forge. Like, it's easy to pick him out. And then so I pop over the ridge, and then immediately just see his antlers, range him 34. All I can see is his neck, like his head, neck, and shoulder. And it's just like, oh no, because I'm like, when you pop over, you have seconds. And then I start scanning, and all of a sudden you see cows' heads like at 15 yards, 25 yards, just cow heads everywhere. I'm like, this is not going to work. And I start taking steps to the left. I'm like, all right, his shoulder's starting to get like more open. And I'm like, I just need this pocket. And I'm like, kept creeping left, and yeah, it didn't work. After 10 seconds later, yeah, the whole herd blew out of there.
And those herds run.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah.
in that
This herd
open
went
country, you can see, and I'm sure it happens in dark timber too. Like, you just don't know
It's
how
an
far they're
eye-opener.
running. But like a minimum of 1.5 to 2 miles,
Right.
sometimes further.
Yeah, 2 miles easy. And this is like I think I went on the stalk like at noon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's 95 degrees and sunny, and these elk run 2 miles.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah. And you know, and this is going to sound like a plug, and it is, but Spartan Forge is so helpful in
Yeah.
this country. Like I don't even care to sound salesy with it, because it really was the fact that, you know, you could pick out the tree or bush or whatever that they're at, see where they're bedded at, and then plan where you want to get to, and then use the measuring tool to see about how far the shot's going to be. Like, we'd always double check it with a rangefinder, but if something happens quick, you have a pretty good idea of what it is, and then we'd switch over to LiDAR to help plan our routes, because there's so many cliffs and there's so much stuff that's going on. You get into places where you can't get down or you can't get through these coulees. So planning your route was super important, and for the wind and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we were constantly
LiDAR is huge, because I mean, there's so, like, they have 10-foot contours, but there's so many little folds and ditches that they're only 6 feet high, but they can hide a human, and it's like they pop up on LiDAR. It's like I can weasel up into this little ditch and not be detected. Yeah, LiDAR was huge on this hunt.
Yeah. How many times on stalks did you use LiDAR to get into a ditch that was like literally 3 or 4 feet high, and we'd have to kind of like crawl through it, but it helped us go across open country where they didn't see us.
Yeah, yeah. It allowed us to shortcut a lot. Otherwise, it's like 2 mile loop or 1 mile, because like LiDAR's like, oh, I can sneak right through this ditch and be out of sight.
Yep.
It was huge.
Yeah. No, I was super impressed by how that all worked out for us. But anyways, you blew out that herd, and we saw.
Yeah, we had that one in our back pocket.
We had 5.8 in our pocket across, and a different, you know, quite a ways. Our glassing points you could see for miles and miles, and so I was up to go make a play, and you'd told me beforehand, and I wish you wouldn't have, but you're like, I've stalked a lot of elk over the last few years in that area. I've never successfully killed one.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it's a tricky spot in there.
But they were in a good spot.
Mm-hmm.
They were in a good spot, but I did have the problem with that same crosswind. Cows in the same position.
Yep.
But he was kind of bedded there, so I did a big loop around, came up from the back side of the ridge, and started popping over and just scooting, and I'm like trying to see him. I could see the trees under, but I can't see him, and everything looks so different. And I'm like looking, and then you could see it from far away. I couldn't, but you started seeing cows getting like worked up and starting to go off, and he pops up 29 yards and no shot opportunity, goes across the next ridge. I range him at 72 and just decided that day one I wasn't going to shoot. And I think I was a little bit spoiled coming from Utah, and I'll talk about that in a different podcast, where I was around a lot of big bulls a lot. And it was like, and then like afterwards I'm like, why didn't I? Because it was like perfect, slightly quartering away, like I was steady, like it would have been, I think I could have made a good shot, and I just, you know, I'd let him go and pass on him, and I'm like, you know, afterwards I'm like, what did I do?
Yeah.
But you know, it ended all for the better. But anyway, so that was day one.
Day one.
Holy
Each got
cow!
a stalk.
2 stalks,
both in range.
In range. Like we were on high hopes. And did day 2? Is that when we like picked up camp and went somewhere else?
Yeah, day 2 is when we did the big day.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a new spot.
Yeah, because we were like, we kind of blew everything out of that. Let's give it a couple days to settle back in, and let's just go try a place that you wanted to get into. That was a long ways. We debated back and forth. Should we backpack it? Should we day hike it? And we're like, well, instead of taking all of our gear in, make sure it's good, let's just day hike it. And it was a long. It wasn't super rough to get in there. It was mostly flat.
It's just time consuming. Like that's bad part's like, yeah, I think it's a touch over 3 miles. So it's like, yeah, we're going to have an hour and a half hike in the dark. And then, I mean, even at night, I mean, then you got to come back out. So it's just early mornings, late nights. That's the only downfall. It's very doable to day hunt. It's just extra long days.
Yeah. So we're going in, and this country looks even different. There's, it's even bigger country, just giant cliffs and all this kind of stuff. Really, really cool to see. But I'm like, Tyler, how do you stalk animals in here? Like, I can't even figure out how to get down. And we get out there, and I see a big mountain lion track right next to our glassing point. We're glassing under a rock ledge that looks like a rattlesnake should like den at. It was a pretty unique spot.
Yeah, it's a night and day difference from like what we normally hunt. Like, so we hunted like 9 days in the same spot, and this was like our one day. I'm like, you want to see some country? Like, this stuff is just rugged, rugged as it gets.
So we get there, and we're really, really surprised at the amount of other hunters that were there.
Yeah. Passed a horse camp, saw some other guys on ridges, guys already in valley floors. Like, at first light, I'm like, it's crowded in here.
Spotting scopes on every high point. But we found an absolute mega bull with 30 cows.
Yeah.
Was there another bull there too?
Yeah. Yeah. He was, we never even named him. I
we never did.
Yeah. He was a really good 6 too. But yeah, this giant was humongous 6, like a bull of your dreams.
Yeah. Like and you looked at me, you're like, this is why we came here. I'm like, okay. And we're sitting there watching them, and like one of the things is like and I learned this a lot from hunting with you here is like, you don't, just because you watch them just go bed, you don't just run in there and put a stalk on. You got to think of the wind. It's like, okay, is the wind supposed to pick up? Because when the wind speeds are higher, it kind of cancels out thermals and a lot more shifting. It's more steady, consistent winds, but it makes tougher shooting. So it depends on how the shot or proposed shot opportunities are going to work. So we're kind of thinking about it, and then finally we're like, let's go in, and we decided this bull had bedded in a spot that we didn't really know if we could get in with all those cows for an actual stalk, but we figured that with these big steep canyons, they were going to come out one way in the evening.
They pretty much cliffed themselves out into like a little corner, and we're like, let's just stage up on their exit routes like for the evening, because they can't go anywhere else. It was like one of those deals. Yeah.
So it took us over 2 hours to even get to them because we couldn't figure out how to get down to the cliffs. And so we're using Spartan Forge, we're using LiDAR, we're using slope angle, we're using all these tools to try to get down there. And it was still, I don't want to go down there ever again, the route that we took. I don't like heights, and it was freaking scary.
And the dirt's so weird out here. It's like either like concrete where you can't bite your boots in, or it's just loose and you're going to slide 30 feet down a mountain. And yeah, it's exactly what we ran into. It's like, oh, these are concrete like type dirt on this one.
Yeah.
And we just had to slide down like, wow, I hope I stop. And had to jump off a couple big boulders. I mean, it's hard to navigate it. Like last year, like I took Tyler in there.
Yeah.
And we saw big bulls, and for like 2 days we tried finding different routes to get off like the glassing ridge, and we couldn't get off. And this year we found it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do it again. Yeah.
And we get right before we went on the stalk, we looked one direction and we saw 2 other guys only a couple hundred yards from us. We hadn't seen them there. I don't know if they were there before us, they got in there after us. I really don't know, but they were there, and I'm like, okay, they're looking. They obviously see the elk too, but everyone's there. It's like, okay, let's just go sit on this exit route. And they didn't look like they were getting ready to make a play at all. They were just kind of chilling up there. So we start going down. A couple hours later, get over there. I'm getting up to the one exit trail, and this guy comes blazing by me at 30 yards. Never even looked at me, just in front of me, just heading right for the elk. I'm like, holy crap. I like ran back down to you. I was like, get ready, because he's about to blow these elk out, and we got to be in our positions. And we sat there for 5 hours in the 90-degree.
Yeah.
I found some shade.
I got a nasty sunburn.
Yeah.
No snacks, no water, because I left the backpack, and it's like
and I, to this day, we don't know what happened.
Yeah. We thought we were like, how did we not hear 30 elk run away? Like, I have no clue how they slipped out, but yeah, we sat there for 5 hours. I snuck up. I'm like, yeah, they're not there. And then started like the 4-hour hike back.
Well, heck, I mean, you were within 100 yards of them.
Yeah,
where they were.
Yeah, I think
so
I was
you would have
exactly
heard
100.
them run.
Yeah.
So we don't know if maybe they shifted beds or left there when we were on our way for the stalk, which is, you know, obviously very possible. But then we're like, once you like kind of peeked over around like 5 o'clock, a little after, just to see, because it was just unusually quiet, and I was like, that guy was there, like something should have happened.
Yeah.
And then we're like, all right, we need to find our way out of here before
That was
it's
the
dark,
deciding factor there.
because we could get ourselves in a really dangerous position, and we were just about out of water.
Yeah.
So we tried finding a different route, which was a lot better.
Yeah. Describe a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It wasn't great, but
Yeah.
it was.
And we still included cliff walking with a 50-foot drop below us, about 1 foot wide. So
Yeah, we did do that. I can't believe I didn't freeze up, because like I said, I don't like heights, but we got out of there, and we're just like, all right, dude, let's go back to our other spot. And kind of what we had learned, and this is kind of like a little bit of a, I don't know, I guess kind of a secret with it, but there was two types of hunters that we'd encountered. People that never left the road systems and glass from there, or people that were going in deep. We were just finding pockets that you couldn't see from the road, but wasn't really a lot of opportunity going deep. And we started finding elk that way, and it was like, we're like, man, it feels weird hunting the same areas and glassing the same spots every day, especially when you get low and we'd maybe see one elk a day or whatever it might be. But it was kind of like the ping pong effect, where there were so many people that you didn't know what was going to get bumped into your valley the next day.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a mystery.
Yeah, it's like Christmas morning. It's like, ooh, what's going to show up today? Yeah.
Yeah.
The ping pong effect's a perfect example. It's like we were talking to guys, and they're like, yeah, I was after this bull 4 days ago, 3 miles this way. And they're like, yeah, I think we saw the same one 4 miles over here. And then it's just like, yeah, they're getting bumped around this entire past 10 days.
And it's also the rut, so they're out looking for cows at night and stuff. And we forgot that the name on the big bull was Machine Bull Kelly.
Yeah.
and so that was the name we had for him. And we're like, we'd love to find him, but it's not, there's so much pressure in there and everything. And it's like, we both said we don't think he's going to stay in that spot.
Yeah.
So it was like,
especially with the intel from the other guys, which will come back to help and bite us at the same time later in the trip.
So, what, yeah, go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So like those guys are like, we saw him like 3-4 miles over here.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we saw him here. He's like, yeah, we're trying to patter him over there. And it's like, we had this intel in our head, and it's like, okay, it sounds like that bull wants to be there, and he got pushed there.
Yeah.
And the day we were in there, he got blown out, and then we just never connected the dots. Like, maybe we should go back to the home range that those guys told us.
Yeah, because those guys told us that, and in saying that, they were leaving, and so they weren't, like, we weren't.
Yeah, no matter what, we had to
toes.
wait 4 days for those guys to leave.
Yeah, we weren't going to go in there and step on their toes. But anyways, so what kind of went on from there once we came back to the home range?
Day 3's where we kind of had that mess up where we sat on a bedded bull for 12 hours.
Yeah, and then we never saw him.
Yeah, and then, there's 2 bedded bulls pretty close.
Yeah.
We thought one was a raghorn. That's still up in the air. It might have been 5'8", like the nice 6, but... So we split up that morning, actually, glassed 2 different drainages. You're like, I got 2 bulls over here. Like, one's the big one. What one was that? That was my
yours.
bull. Yeah,
that was Fat Lip.
Okay. Yeah, so then I came over and met you, and he's like, one's in this pocket, and the other one's in the next pocket. And as soon as we sat down, like, next to you, I glassed up with my spotter, and I'm like, yeah, I see a bull. It doesn't look big. But he was in a thicket, and I couldn't see his rack good. So we just rolled him out, and, like, obviously we have to go after the bigger one, which we do.
Yeah.
And then, it was 12-hour days sitting in the sun waiting for him, and he vanished on us.
And what's crazy is you look at these timber patches may not be that big all the time, and those elk can disappear in that like no other. I mean, you can stare at the same thing all day, and it just takes the sun angle at one point to catch the shine off their tan body, and they're like, there he is, or an antler to flicker. But if the sun's at a different position, you'll never see them in there.
Yeah, we did a lot of angle game, like walk
Yeah.
50 yards and re-glass for a half an hour, walk 50 yards, re-glass, and then you pick something out. It's just all angles and light. It's thick in some of those pockets for sure.
Yeah. So then day 4 rolled around, and I was up, and there was, this day 4 was a good day. Well, obviously, as we get to, but we had Fat Lip came back in, went to his timber pocket that you had stalked him in
on day one. Yeah.
So I was getting ready to make that play, and then a mystery bull that we nicknamed Moby Dick. He really doesn't have anything to do with, but he had big whale tail.
Yeah,
that's why
just
I called him that.
Big old whale. Yeah, that was like a spur of the moment, just stuck immediately.
Yeah,
and he was bigger.
He was big, and he bedded by himself, and I'm like, perfect. You could see him, all this stuff. I go in for the stalk. I can't find him. It's thicker than he looked like from across the ridge, and I'm like, sneak. And the thing is, I didn't even the wind. I should have waited. So my thought process was to go in about 10 o'clock in the morning before we were supposed to get 30-mile-per-hour winds that day. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I need to get in there because I don't want to be able to shoot in that. But that was before I learned that keeps the winds consistent when you have that floating winds. You think about it, anybody that's listening to whitetail hunters and you hunt in the mountains, and it's like when you get sun, shade, you get some swirling going on. There's a bunch of stuff that can happen. And I felt the wind kind of shift, and I didn't know if it was going at him, but you had told me later that I blew him out when I was probably 70, 80 yards from him. I wasn't even that close, but I still snuck in for the next 45 minutes, and he wasn't even there.
Yeah.
And he ran forever.
Yeah.
That was one of the ones that he probably did 3.5 miles.
Yeah. He wrapped like around me and then kept going up the next valley. And it's like, I lost him after that. He was out of the county.
So I did the walk of shame back to the glassing point, tired, wore out.
That was a big loop too.
Yeah.
I bet that was pushing 2 miles one way.
Yeah.
You played it smart. It's just, that was the first time that I've ever even attempted to go on a stalk that early. Usually it's like they bed, they're never going to leave. Like, just wait for midday, winds be steadier, and the mythical thermals to help you out. But yeah, you went early. You probably left at 9 a.m. and you were in bow range at 10:30.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
We didn't make that mistake again, though. No more morning stalks.
I did the big loop back around so I didn't blow out the other bull that was, in the drainage.
Right next to you.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he was 200 yards, and then so you had to do a 2-mile loop just not to blow out my opportunity then.
Yeah. So then, you were kind of like, kind of say what was in your head then at that point.
So it was the same exact everything from day one. Crosswind, and he has 15 or 16 cows. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I learned my lesson. Like, I'm not going to do it again. Like, I think he's unkillable. I kept saying that. I'm like, I think he's unkillable. Let's go try finding Moby Dick, like the one you just messed up. And then we were just like, oh, no, let's just keep staring at him. It's supposed to get really windy today. And then next thing you know, like an hour later, so this bull was bedded right in the heart of like his cows. I mean, there's cows 3 feet to his left, 5 feet to his right, 6 feet below him, 6 feet above him. And over the next 2 hours, just one by one, the cows just left him. And then the wind started picking up a lot. And then it's just like, he's starting to become killable because he's on the downwind side of the crosswind, and his 16 cows are upwind of him. Granted, his cows are only 30 yards away, but I'm like, so if I do that prairie dog method of popping over the ridge right above him, there's nothing below him like to smell me. So it started adding up. It's like, I think he's killable. Like, I'm going to try doing this same exact thing again. And then, so, I mean, it was the same exact stalk, that big old mile loop down below, so I'm not spotted. And then coming up the backside, the wind's screaming. And it's like one of those, like I'm almost scared to shoot that. I remember before I left the glassing point, I'm like, is this an expandable or a fixed blade day? Because it's like, that's how windy it is. It's like, I know it's going to be a close shot, but it's windy. So then creeping up, I mean, the wind was perfect. Like, I could step on sticks and anything like that. Like, he would never hear me. So I crawl over the ridge, and immediately I just see antler tips, and I'm like, wow, I'm pretty close. And then scanning around, like, I'm not seeing cows. I'm like, perfect crosswind just ripping. I probably crept another 5 yards, and I got tucked up in the shade right behind a bush. And I mean, I ranged the tree he's at, and it's 23, so I think he's like 25. And sitting there, I'm like, I can sit here all day. This is going to happen, I think, because he has to get up, walk into my shooting lane to get to where his cows went. I mean, I think 10 minutes went by, not even. And then next thing you know, the antlers started moving a lot. I'm like, I think he's getting up. And then he stands up, immediately just draw back. I'm like, well, I hope he just comes out and doesn't rebed immediately, because we did watch him just stand up and then rebed.
Yeah.
And it hasn't moved. And sure enough, he did his little 180, popped out, and yeah, just let him have it. And as soon as I shot, like everything felt good. I mean, it's a 25-yard chip shot, but it was like the quietest shot I've ever heard in my life. Like there was no like punkin' noise, nothing. I think I missed all the ribs. Like just I laced them, but it was so quiet. And I'm like, I think I just missed. And I go running up the ridge. Cows go blowing out, and I'm like, what's going on? And then I just look 30 yards below me, and he's dead within 30 seconds. It's nuts.
Well, and I'm up in the glassing point, and I have one of those all-in systems that go on my Maven spotter so I can record my phone. And as soon as I saw you get up there, I clicked it on. So I'm watching through that. And then I saw you get ready to go full draw, and I hit the record, and I got it all. It's windy, so it's a little bit shaky, but video is pretty cool. You see you at full draw, and the bull just walk out into the sun like perfect.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize at the time, but after you shot, I'm trying to follow the bull, but trying to do that with a spotter from a mile away is kind of difficult. And I just left it sitting there record, and you see him go and dive and fall into the ditch. That's where he died at. And I thought, and I didn't know at first, you knew he was dead before I did, but I looked up above, and all his cows came out, and he didn't. And I'm like, okay, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
That's a really good sign. And then, you gave me the signal to come down. And,
arms up, just celebrating.
Yeah, to come down. And, oh, man, I was so pumped for you to be able to get your first bull, and an absolute giant at that, like just a big bull. And, yeah, that was just the absolute perfect scenario.
Felt good, yeah. And that was like another 90-degree day, too. And he perfectly died in a nasty little ditch full of shade.
Yeah, so it wasn't that bad when we were butchering them up and everything and getting them. And I was pretty impressed with our pack out. We did it relatively quick. It wasn't like super long, but it was a few miles, and it was all uphill.
Yeah, every step was up.
Every step was up.
Yeah.
But it worked out really good, and got him back, and it was just like, holy cow.
Like, it's doable. Like, you just need the perfect scenario. Like, that's like for 2 years, like I haven't had that scenario of like just perfect win. That's what these stalks rely on. Yeah. And like every day, like the thing that throws me off is like where I'm at and live in Montana, it's like 90% of the year it's a southwest wind. Like out here in central Montana, I'm like, one day it's south, the next day it's west, then it's northeast, and it's every day it was a different wind. It's like, it's like you just gotta wait for that perfect storm, I guess. Yeah.
When you have a south wind, it's so difficult because they die and live and die by north facing slopes here.
Oh yeah.
Like that is where most of the timber is, but they do not deviate from. You can
no.
I was looking at your map of like pins of bulls from the years, and almost every single one of them that bedded was on a perfectly north facing slope.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good thing. Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's a little tip there. You can e-scout pretty easily.
But finding them is one thing. It's not the most difficult part of it. It's what you just said of lining up all that stuff on the stalk to make it happen. Knowing when you got to go quick, knowing when you got to go slow, and how much seconds matter. If you would have showed up there 5 minutes later,
I
wouldn't have had a shot opportunity probably. And, that happened to me later in the hunt where if I would have been there
30 seconds. Yeah. That's what I was telling you, like watching it through my scope. It's like you were getting ready to pop over that ridge, and it's just like, son of a gun, like 30 seconds sooner, because he stood above his bed and took those couple steps. But that was later on in the hunt.
You have limited time off work and everything, and you're like, no, I'm going to stay with you and help you hunt the rest of the 10-day hunt that we had planned. And I was like, dang, that's awesome. So we got on it, and the next day was kind of slow. I feel like the day after we took it a little bit easy. Like we didn't really get after it that hard.
Was that day the first and like only day we didn't have a shooter to go after?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that Friday then.
Yeah. So we didn't have anything to go after, and we still got up. We were at the glassing knob first light, even after packing that thing out. And I realize I'm getting older because it takes me 2 or 3 days to get sore now.
Yeah.
I feel pretty good after carrying 100 and some pounds out, 2 different loads. It's like, feel pretty good. Yeah. And then it hit me. But we, so that day wasn't a whole lot going on. Then that comes into day 6. What was going on?
Saturday. That's when we saw your bull for the first time.
Yeah, that's when we saw Simple Plan.
Yeah.
So, Simple Plan, if anybody knows, that was a band that was kind of a, I don't know, they're punk type band, alternative band, whatever you want to call them. And I had actually texted some buddies a picture of them from my spotter. I said, we need help coming up with a name. I texted Justin Mueller, who usually films a lot of my hunts, and Michael Palladino. And Michael's like, Simple Plan. He's like, it's a simple plan. Just go in there and kill him. And I'm like, and it was actually like a really complicated
the most complex stock. Yeah, we probably had at the trip.
Because we knew where he was bedded, but he was bedded in super thick bushes. And he had, what do you have? A couple cows and a.
He had 1 cow and 2 raghorns with him.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think we measured it. It was like a 20 by 20 yard pocket of bush. It's like one of those, we had them pinpointed, no ifs, ands, or buts. But we sat there for 3 hours coming up with a plan for Simple Plan. Yeah. And it was, wind was bad. And it's like, well, the thermals wouldn't work. And then it's just, he was in a perfect spot to be an elk.
Yeah, he liked to do that, as we'll get into more in this trip. But we're like, we got to try it anyway. So my plan was to go and just sit there and kind of wait for the evening. But that never works when you have winds switch. You either gotta, if you're gonna sit that close, you almost gotta expect something to happen pretty soon. This is at least my observations. Or you have to back off enough and wait until that final hour of daylight to move in and figure out what the winds are doing. And I just kept pushing the envelope thinking I was going to be able to see him somehow. And what happened on that one?
I mean, I think you got to 20, 30 yards of the bush.
All right. Sorry, we had the lights go out there. But anyway, so I got 20, 30 yards of the bushes there.
Yeah. Yeah, you were within 20, 30 for sure. And then I think you guys where you wanted to be. I remember we were talking about, it's back off 100 yards and wait it out for 6 hours, or get to there, and you always have that chance where they might stand up and you might have a shot opportunity. So yeah, you crept in until 20, 30 yards, and I think within half an hour, I think the raghorn blew out, and then soon enough they all followed after that.
Yeah. Simple Plan kind of ran out of our life, but not exactly.
Yeah.
Because I forgot about this part with them.
Yeah.
So we saw him go into this other drainage, and again, I make the big long walk back, down across, get up there, and I'm like, I think he went into this drainage. I didn't see him come out and go over to the ridge top. So it was a little bit before dark, and we decided I was going to go through and kind of still hunt that drainage because we couldn't really see into it good, and do a little bit of calling, and you were going to sit up on the ridge and just kind of watch and see. And he ends up slipping through the saddle 100 yards away from you.
Yeah. Good look at him.
Filmed him on your phone.
Yeah, I filmed him on my phone. I'm like, well, it's a real shame Beau's 400 yards below me. Yeah. This bull is just looking around right next to me, and I'm like, So, yeah. Another close call on him.
Yeah. So that was the introduction really to Simple Plan, and then it was the next day we decided to go over into that hidden valley where we thought Machine Bull Kelly was at.
Yep.
And so that was quite a walk in the morning that we had to do. Down, up, down kind of deal. Get up there and find you had a glassing point. You'd been there before. So we went in there, and big canyon, new country, you get so excited.
New energy, new hopes.
New energy. Daylight breaks. nothing. And we're looking through, and you're like,
I swear this place is good.
yeah, but then you're also like, if we're not even seeing one elk, we're missing something.
Yeah.
But it's such big country, it's hard to pick apart everything. Or, an elk might go through something for 5 seconds, but you might be looking at a different area at that time. So it's so easy to miss stuff there. And then, what was it? Do you want to kind of continue there? Like what happened there?
So I think
morning.
8:30. So 2 hours after first light, we finally saw like a raghorn just appear on a ridgeline, like right across from us, like places that we've been staring. And he's just on a ridgeline and just runs straight down into this coulee, and then we don't see him again. It's like, I think he was a raghorn. It's like one of those scenarios, like you had 5 seconds, didn't have time to switch to a spot or anything. And you're like, well, we got one there. And then what was that? Then we started BSing again, and like, oh, what are we going to do today? And I think it was like 15 minutes later, a new bull popped up pretty much like same area, and he was the weirdest, biggest 5 ever. Like his fronts were starting out to be a 400-inch bull, and then he just died off.
Yeah, he died off on top.
Yeah, he had like 2-foot fronts, like 20-inch thirds. Like he was beautiful down low, nice and wide, but it was just a really good 5, giant
I think he
body.
was an old elk.
Yeah, giant body on him.
Mm-hmm. And I guess we should have said that day was the temperature swing that went from a high of 92 the day before to a high of 60 or 59.
Yeah, I think it was 50s for that day.
Yeah.
Low of like 39, something like that.
Yeah, but with
cold.
wind chill, it was like in the 20s.
Yeah.
So we went from literally can't find anywhere to cool down to like kind of cold because you're not used to it. We've been dealing with such hot weather this whole, week leading up to it. But we watched them go in there, and we have a spot on? We had a spot on the one bed for a little bit, and then on the 5x5, and then we lost them. Yeah.
Then it was kind of a guessing game. Like he's got to be in that coulee. Like I think he just went on the backside of one of these many folds that turns out to be in there, and it's like he's got to be in there. So yeah, you went on your stalk over there for him.
Yeah, and I picked apart that coulee. Like everywhere I thought he was, I thought I was gonna have a perfect shot in his bed, and couldn't find him.
Yep.
And so I went over to the next coulee where that raghorn was. I snuck up on that raghorn sleeping. I'm sitting there looking. His vitals wide open. He's sprawled out, sleeping, and I was like literally just knocked out,
just begging
and
for
I'm
it.
I'm like, oh man. So I wasn't gonna shoot him, so I moved out, and then I'm like, well, I don't know where he slipped out somewhere, So we started heading back over, and I get back up on the other ridge, and you show me a video of another gentleman packing out Machine Bull Kelly.
Yeah, you got a free backpack ride. And the crazy thing is, like, so when you're on your stalk for like the 5x5 and Raghorn, the very next drainage, 200 yards from you, while you're like coming back from your stalk, like you guys are paralleling each other, just a big ridge dividing you, and this guy's carrying out Machine Bull Kelly, just a ginormous 6-point, just huge. And like I think our spears dropped quite a bit. The biggest bull we've seen was getting packed out of where we knew he was. It just took us a week to get into there.
Yeah, I know. And and congratulations, whoever that guy was. Because, I don't know what the score of that bull would be, but probably 370.
Oh, yeah. Easy. I don't even know how.
Maybe bigger.
Yeah. No doubt 350 plus.
Yeah.
It was dragging like on the ground behind him, packing it out.
Yeah, like huge. Once in a lifetime type bull. And he must have shot the night before, and what we figured out was he probably bumped those elk in there at that time,
at 8:30 in the morning,
and then he must have bumped it out when we weren't looking, that 5x5 again when he came in to get another load of meat.
Yeah,
and we just
like the wind was
him.
Perfect for your stalks, and like where he killed his elk, it was just probably piping right over to the Raghorn 5x5. Like it all makes sense looking back now. It's like, okay, why are elk moving at 8:30, 9 a.m. when we haven't seen this in a week?
And kind of trotting,
Yeah.
And at first I was like, it's a cold front, maybe, but that made more sense after seeing that. But we were just at like a low of lows, like after seeing that. And again, super excited for the guy, glad that he got it. But in our, of this mystical creature of Machine Bull Kelly that was in there, and he's gone. And
Yep.
so really it was coming down to the last couple days at this point, and it's like, what do we do? I don't know. There's people everywhere. Got to go back to our old trusty spots and hope something shows up. And you and I split up again, and it just turned into bulls everywhere.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
There's 3 bulls?
Yeah, so what was it, 2 days ago? Yeah, we split up again, and I guess, yeah, it was first light, and yeah, there was a bull that popped up below me, and I'm like, oh, it's 5'8", and then, like, this is, like, still early, like 6:30, I can barely see what's happening. He gets run off by another bull, and then now there's, like, 2 bulls, 6 cows, like, in this little pocket, and they're pretty close to me, like 800 yards away, and he ends up, like, getting chased 200 yards from me in my glassing point. And then that's when, Simple Plan shows up too. So now I'm like, there's 3 shooters over here. So you eventually made your way over to me.
Yeah.
Because that's usually what we do in the mornings is like, we'll meet up like at 7:30. Like somebody's got to be on something.
Yep.
And then, yeah, if one person doesn't show up at the other person's glassing point, we're meeting up.
Yep.
And then, so yeah, you came over and then you glassed towards me, and yeah, he's bedded right underneath me. And then I'm like, well, I got to go tell him about all these bulls. And so when I stood up, I blew out the one.
Yeah.
I think he was the smallest, but I mean, still a really good 6.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, then we had
I'm
the
like
day.
trying to wave to you to show you that there's, a bull down below you, but you didn't see it because he's like literally below you on the shelf.
Yeah, it's like I was packing up my backpack, turned around and see a bull staring at me. I'm like, oh, yeah. Sorry. So yeah, then that was a game changer. We had 2 bulls lined up for the day, so that's a good feeling. I guess you can take over then on the first stalk.
Yeah, that was a 2 stalk day.
Yeah.
But we go and I see, Simple Plan. That's the one I really wanted to shoot. He's a bigger of the 2, and he was in a stalkable position at times. And this comes back to what we were talking about where the 30 seconds mattered. So wind was going to be just off. I let the winds pick up a little bit. That was where LiDAR helped me find these little ditches to crawl through. I was joking with you that I was coming across these obstacles, and I was just like, I was joking of like, if anyone's read Jack Carr's series of books, the James Reese series of books, about where, James Reese will be like, he'll be in a bad situation. He's like, think, Reese, figure it out, figure it out. And I'm like, figure it out. And I'm like, all right, this bush is going to be loud. I don't know how to get through it. And it's funny, but it's in the middle of this range. I go above it, 2 feet, cows can see me. I had to go underneath this bush, and it took me.
You're 100 yards from like this herd elk. Yeah.
And you're watching across, and you thought I was going in there to take a shit, so you stopped watching for a minute.
Yeah. You went into the bush. You aborted.
Yeah.
And then you went into the bush, and then it just looked like you're like squatting down. I'm like, what is he doing? Yeah, it turns out you had to crawl through it.
Yeah, I was trying to get through without making any noise. And so I'm like going through, and I get through it. I'm like, oh man. And I'm like, I'm in the clear now. So I kind of like scoot down this ridge, and I'm looking with the waypoint I marked. I'm like, I'm 50 yards from them. If I pop up on this thing, I'm going to be inside bow range. And I pop up and I crawl up, and I just look to my right, and there's a cow just looking back at me. I'm like, ah, shit. And she goes to bust out, and I just stand up at that point and go to full draw. I was like, he's got to be right close to it. And he stands up, and I can see his head, neck, top of shoulders. He stares at me for a while. He runs. I cow call, stop him. He's too far at that point. That's Simple Plan. And I'm like... And from your angle, you filmed it through the spot and scope. It looks like, almost like I could be able to shoot him.
Yeah.
You could see his body perfect. Yeah. But the crazy thing was that you had said afterwards was that bull was in the open there, right where that cow was that spotted me at like 20-some yards, 30 seconds before I popped up.
Yeah, he had no clear there. And just 30 seconds before you came over, he just had this whim to, he's like, I better go 10 feet over here and go check these 3 bedded cows.
Yeah.
And you popped over as he was just reaching those cows. It's like 30 seconds, he would have been in the wide open for a 5-yard window. And it's just like, that's where it's like, if you didn't like mess around with that bush or we didn't talk for an extra, it's like, that's just the part of just being unlucky. But like it worked for me. I got lucky. You got unlucky. It's just like it's
the
nuts.
nature of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, like, with the stalks, I'm learning is like the more you can go on, the more you learn, and the more, you know, as Cody Rich always calls it at bats. The more at bats you get, the better chance you have of hitting the ball, you know. And it's like putting yourself in that scenario more times, the more times you have for it to potentially go right, even though it can go wrong. And so I get back up there. I'm pretty wore out, but we're like, all right, there's this other herd over there, but they're in a real tough spot, bushes again.
Yeah.
But we went over, and Simple Plan blew out and went.
He actually joined. Like, it's so thick. There was Simple Plan and like his 5 cows, and what's his name again?
Yeah, we call that one. What's his name again?
Yeah. And his 4 cows. They're 2 herds, 80 yards apart, and it's so thick they had no clue each other existed.
Yeah.
So for 4 hours, we watched these 2 herds, just no clue. Well, one herd vanished.
Yeah.
Don't know how.
We still don't know what happened with them.
Yeah, that one stumps me.
Yeah. But anyways, we go in, and I'm like, at that point, I was like, I don't know where Simple Plan's at, but what's his name again, which is a little bit smaller, but still a nice bull. And you and I went back and forth, and we're like, should we come in from this direction, And you had one idea, I had one idea. Nothing was going to work. Then I'm like, I just got to get over there, run out of daylight, get over there, and wind's doing opposite. I'm like, I don't know where to go. I'm like, I'm going to go on this other ridge. When I say these ridges are that have coulees in between them. They're only 60 yards apart. So like you can shoot across them, super steep. I got up and I was like, just thinking that the wind floating the way it was, that it wouldn't float across the valley. You know, if thermals are pulling down, it'd dump down the ditch or whatever. And I don't know if the cow smelled me from one of the crosswinds or saw me, but I could see her, and she kind of stood up and was acting a little bit weird. And then I got her. I'm like, I just need that bull to come check on her. He's right around the corner. I knew he was on the other side of the bush, and he did not. Well, she kind of got alarmed and started walking away. And I bugled thinking I might be able to get them worked up, and they took off.
Yeah.
Ran. I'm like, man. I was like, I thought that sounded pretty good. No, they're gone and left the country again. And then I just sneak up. I'm like, well, I didn't hear the other herd take off, not knowing if they were there or not. I snuck all through there. They were not there. So I don't know. They blew out. You didn't see them from up the spotter. I think they left earlier in the day, and we just didn't know.
Yeah.
But so Simple Plan was gone again. What's his name again was gone. Dragging. I'm getting back, go up, see 2 guys in a side-by-side that parked right next to
Yeah,
you.
they showed up like at 7:15 at night. Like, you can borderline not even see anymore. They parked next to like my rig, and you had to walk by them. It's like, Yeah, and I'm walking down this road, and I walk right past them, and they I don't know if they purposely were trying to act like they didn't see me or what. And I'm like, hey guys, how's it going? Good. You know, just kind of that pretty quick. Walk back, get in your truck. We go back. They go past our camp that night. And then this morning, this last day, day 10 of the hunt, we're like, all right, gotta make something happen. Like, these guys seem like they're snaking in on us pretty hard. We got to get in our spots early. So got in early, got up on this glassing knob, and I start seeing the headlights coming from the side-by-side. And I'm like, here we go. And they come 250 yards from where my truck's parked and where I'm at. And this spot, it's not like a trailhead where you park and you got all these different ways you can go. Where they're glassing from, where I'm glassing from, the exact same spots. And so I'm there, and I purposely skylined myself so they could see me. And I saw them look at me through their binos. I wave at them. They just get back to it, and then they split up, and I watched the other one drive the side-by-side and park right next to your truck. Yeah. So I had a guy glassing 200 yards from me in the morning.
Yeah.
You had a guy 200 yards from you glassing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, 7:30, I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
I'm walking back to my truck. He's hopping back in his side-by-side, and then I have to follow him over to his buddy. I drive past them, park next to you, and it's like, we're 200 yards apart right now.
Yeah.
And now there's 2 guys glassing here and us 2 glassing. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, and I'm like cursing these guys up and down. I'm like, that's poor ethics to do that and just not sportsmanlike. And so then I found a herd elk, and I'm like, Tyler, do you think they can see them from there? He's like, I don't think so. They might be able to see that spike. And Simple Plan was the lead bull in there. And I'm like,
there's an update to Simple Plan too.
Yeah. I'm like, something's wrong with Simple Plan. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I think he broke most of his beam off. And I was like, something's just weird. Like, I saw it in the light, and I'm like, something just doesn't look right. I think he broke something off. And I bedded in a spot. We're kind of planning it. We're going to wait till the afternoon. Should have known with those guys there that. And I made a critical mistake, which you corrected me on when I came over, was, I skylined myself so that they could see me. But after I figured that they weren't going to leave, I should have unskylined myself on the other side of the ridge, because they were watching where I was pointing my spot and scope.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden we look and we don't see them over there again, and they're running across the ridge. And they must have a YouTube channel or something, because the one guy was filming the other one. And they're going up, and I'm just watching them, and I'm kind of laughing. I'm filming them through the spot scopes. They're going. They have no idea where these elk are.
Yeah, they're like still hunting it. Like, that's why we think like they were just going off where our spotters were pointed.
Yeah.
Because like they're just creeping above all these timber patches across the valley, and like they just have no clue like where to look or what to do. And it's just like, dang.
And I'm getting I was pretty fired up. I'm like, I'm going to talk to these guys. I'll be waiting side by side when they come out for, this is bullshit. And this is, it's like, it's the last day, and this is what I'm dealing with. And I'm, just kind of in a bad mood about it. Watch them go. They get above those elk, and they're going down. I'm like, they're not going in the right spot, but that's where that spike was.
Yeah.
And you and I were just kind of narrating, like acting like what's going on with them, and I'm like watching it, and I filmed them through the spotting scope, and I see him go to full draw. I was like, oh dang! I was like, what is there?
Yeah.
Spike's there. He shoots. He misses at like 20 yards, and I'm not critiquing his shooting there. It happens to everybody, but misses, goes off, gets another shot. Think he hit it. Don't know. That spike runs right into the herd, and then ends up spooking the rest of the herd, and they run right below those guys. And then you could see like those guys look at the big bull in there and be like, oh,
we messed up.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was reassuring that they had no clue that they were 100 yards from the big bull and resorted to a spike, and like watching them run and then just staring at it as it goes by. It's like, sometimes karma's good.
Yeah. And where karma really helped, because like, so the other day too, we had a spot we wanted to get into, and there was an easier way to park and go in there. And we saw a guy and his kid that were going there. So I stopped and talked to him, or we stopped and talked to him, and it's like, hey, you hunting there? You coming back in the afternoon? He's like, yeah, this is where they're going. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to, I know it's public land, we could go in there, but it's like, I'm not going to go screw these people up and do that. So we left, we didn't go in there, and I'm like, I was like, kind of just being pouty and being like, oh, why is it that, when I try to be nice to people and not crowd them, that people still do it back? And, but they kicked that herd out, and he ran a good 1.5 miles and bedded not too far from the road in a super stalkable position.
Yeah. Perfect wind. And like,
perfect wind.
One thing like we find out, it's like when they get bumped, they're pretty desperate to find the nearest shade, and they're almost more killable, because like it's not their true home. They're scraping just to find shade and some cover, and like, where they stopped, it's like, holy smokes, like this is happening.
Yeah. So I ran around, got on the backside of this ridge, and I'm like, because I don't think they're gonna be there the rest of the day. They just still didn't look very comfortable.
Yeah.
They weren't even bedded when I left for the stalk, but I was like,
I think you can get there in like 45 minutes. Yeah. Like, this is worth it. Like, they're holed up, but they're standing, because they're like, I don't know where home is, because I've never been here. Like, there's no beds there. It's a weird spot. Really weird. Super steep, kind of a coulee draw there with a few pine trees, and I come running around the bend, and it's earlier in the hunt,
I don't know how we got on this conversation. We always say stupid stuff, but I kept joking with you that I was going to kill a Nuno 2 bull.
Nuno 2.
I don't know where it came from, but I said I was going to kill
one
a
of
bull.
your stalks. You're like, Nuno 2, I think I'm going to kill him.
Yeah. Just being a smart ass. And I was like, yeah, so I'm going around. I remember looking at my watch. I was like, holy cow, there's a good chance this actually happens.
Yeah.
And so I'm slipping in and I'm scooting in, and things just look different again. But I'm like, trust my pin, trust what where I saw them at. And I'm looking, I'm going down through and scooting on my butt, just real slow. And then all of a sudden, I see a cow start kind of feeding on this opposite side of the coulee, and I range her. She's at 65 yards, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, that bull's between me and her on my side, but it's so steep below me, I can't see it. And the wind's just perfect. It's gusting, like, in my face, kind of quartering to me. I'm like, and so tell from your perspective what you're seeing.
So my perspective was just pure frustration because I didn't know. I knew it was steep, but in my head I was just picturing, like, how does he not see this? Like, there just must have been the smallest rise ever. I'm like, I know he has to see the cow. He's ranging. And I'm like, the cow's 65. I'm like, this bull's 40, like right underneath him. And then, like, obviously you stopped, which was a smart move because the cow's in the wide open. All it takes is a little head turn and she's onto you.
Yeah.
And I'm just freaking out because I'm like, the bull's under you. Just like, who cares about the cow? Just draw back and shoot. And, like, clearly you didn't see it. And I'm just freaking out in my perspective.
Yeah.
I'm like, if he sees them, how does he not see the bull?
Yeah, and I couldn't. And then all of a sudden the bull stood up and I saw it. I'm like, that's got to be the bull. So, because I just saw a big body. So I'm trying to range, and I couldn't get a range right off the bat. And then he goes down across the coulee, and he goes up the other side. And I'm like, crap. And he's starting to push those cows. I'm like, he's going to leave. Got a range on him at 65, and he was starting to kind of walk away. And I cow called and stopped. Had the pin settled in on him there. Shot broke good, felt good, didn't know what was going on. They run away. And same thing that happened with your bull. Cows came out of a coulee. Bull did not come out of a coulee. I'm like, well, right before that I was glassing, and I'm looking for a spot on his body and for blood, but I could see his nose and I could see blood coming out of his mouth. I'm like, oh yes, that is really good. And went down to that coulee and didn't come out. And I'm like trying to get a different position to be able to see. And then I thought I caught a glimpse of antlers like flipping upside down. And I'm like, he just died right there. And I'm like fired up. But then I'm like, no, calm. Like, grab your pack. Just see if you can get a vantage point to make sure. And he was dead.
Yeah. The crazy parts, they ran right at me. So, like, you're across the coulee, only 400, like, this is tight quarters, like, this little drainage system. Like, you're pretty close to me across the valley, same elevation. You shoot, and they just come running right at me. They pop up, like, 200 yards, and the bull's in the back, and I just see blood pouring out of his mouth. I'm like, oh, he's dead. They drop into a coulee 150 yards, and then the 6 cows pop up 100 yards away, and I don't see a bull. And the cows run off. And it's like, looking over at you, it's like, your arms are up. But then you're, like, giving me the stop because, like, I just wanted to run down because the bull's 100 yards from me. And then, I had to wait for you to come down. But
I was just like, I just want to make sure he's dead, like, not rush this. And for some reason he got knocked out. I don't know. I just was coming up scenarios in my head but go over, and there he is, stone cold dead. And just like, man, I was just filled with so many emotions because it was like such a roller coaster, as all these hunts are. But it's just like last day, last chance.
Yeah.
Simple plan. My third opportunity at him. Third time I was inside bow range on him. Saw him more times than that. It sucked that he broke off. He's only got 4 on that side. He broke off his whole upper half.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to see if I can get that taxidermist to fix that, because I do have a bunch of video of him, so I know what he looked like. So that was hurtful, but just so excited. I just couldn't believe it. And like, I'm like, man, we did it. Like, you and I together went out and were able to double up on this hunt, and we worked our asses off right until the bell rang.
Like, today I was planning on leaving like at 3:00 to run to town, get ice and my meat and stuff, and Yeah, things change. Yeah, shot him at noon 02, and
Yeah, I shot him at 12.
I have the video of like the elk running at me, and I think my video is recorded like at 12:04 or something like that. I'm like, he did shoot at noon 02.
Yeah, it was crazy, and we got there. So started butchering them up. Took some photos, started butchering them up, and you're like, hey, I gotta go pick up my meat. I said I was gonna go get it whatever time, and you're like, you think you're good to quarter the other side of the elk and start packing. You go, I'll take a hind quarter back with me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah. And it wasn't a crazy pack out at all. It's pretty simple as far as elk pack outs go. But so I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I can take care of myself. Well, apparently I couldn't, because I'm cutting and I'm on the hind quarter on the opposite side there. I've been cutting, and I'm like, So I use fixed blade when I'm doing it. I don't use the replaceable blades because I cut myself. So, so I have a case. I think it was a CT1. It's like the carbon fiber, maybe a CT2. I maybe have that mixed up, but carbon fiber handle, lightweight, super nice, super sharp, was working great. And it just got to the point where going through some of that hide, it started dulling out a little bit. And I was like, I should sharpen this. Look, and I forgot my sharpener. I'm like, crap. I'm like, I'm just going to keep going. And knowing better. And what I could have done was I had another knife and a sharpener at the truck and just took a load of meat out and came back and finished it. But I was like, I wanted to make sure I got the meat off the body as quick as possible, start cooling it. So I started going, and I slipped and I stabbed myself above the knee pretty deep.
Yeah.
Shoved my knife, went right through my pants, into my leg, and instantly just started gushing blood pretty good. Pulled my pants down. My pants are kind of full of blood, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. Grab my first aid kit. So I always keep that in the lid of my pack. It's easy to get to. So I keep the Uncharted triage kit, and then I keep Leuco tape and a tourniquet and a quick clot gauze in there. And so I grabbed the quick clot and I dabbed it first, kind of got it going there, because I just stabbed it with a dirty knife. I sterilized it after I got some of the bleeding to stop, and then I added pressure with the gauze for 3 minutes. Got it to stop relatively quick, so I knew I didn't hit an artery, and then just took Leuco tape and wrapped it around my leg. But it's at a hard spot because it's where my leg bends right at my knee. It's, it's above there. So I'm like, I didn't really close it up. Like it does need stitches, I'm pretty sure, but I don't know if I'm going to go to the hospital or not. But so I'm like doing that, and I'm like, I inReach messaged you, and I was like, hey man, like, this is what's going on. I know you're driving to town. Just want to let you know in case anything happens. You're like, should I turn around? I'm like, no, you're good. I start cutting, and it's hurting, and then I start getting like real lightheaded, and I'm like, this isn't smart. And I was like, Tyler, how far, I'm only 30 minutes into the drive, and I'm like, if you can come back and help me, I just want to make sure I get this meat off, because I can't finish butchering this on my own. I was like, I'm pretty confident I can still pack out, it's just going to be slow.
Yeah.
But I can't bend down. I can't get on my knees and do this. And so thankfully you came back and helped finish butcher it, and you did do the rest of the butchering, and you carried the two hindquarters out, and I carried a shoulder, and really just a shoulder and a head, I think. Yeah. Through it. So you did most of the packing there, but super thankful for that. I came back and cleaned it up some more, and tried to seal up the wound here the best I could, and get through it so I can drive back tomorrow. And so that was that freaking hurt so bad, like, and it still hurts here.
I would say you're limping around. I mean, you cut muscle. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a couple layers of it going in there.
It was gross.
Yeah, Tyler's like, it's probably better that I wasn't here, because
I probably would have passed out.
Yeah, and then it made me like panic about it. But that's just another lesson with the first aid kits, having them readily available, handy. I mean, I was working on stopping the bleeding within 30 seconds of it happening, which is pretty good. So, we got all the meat out. before, just as it was kind of getting dark.
Right at dark, yeah.
Yeah, getting everything out, and came back to camp. Got some much needed food, and looking at our two beautiful bulls here, and
stare at them for a couple more hours,
just reminiscing.
Yeah. Just had to wait to the last day, though.
I know.
You had to get the full experience, day 10.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave, man.
I know.
It's October 2nd. Like, it should be whitetail hunting. You know, I've never hunted elk in October. Yeah. It's weird, but I don't think I'm going to make it for the PA opener. I mean, this is going to come out after that, but that was my plan, was to get back, and I got some work to do with deboning some of this meat to fit it in the coolers and stuff in the morning, and repackaging things and figuring stuff out. So I probably won't. I don't know. Maybe I will be able to hunt the evening, but honestly, I don't really even care. I just want to these trips between the Utah hunt and this. Like I said, I'll cover the Utah hunt in a different podcast, but like, it's just been the best elk season of my life. And it's pretty awesome.
All in 2 weeks, pretty much, too.
Yeah.
2 big bulls for you.
Yeah. But I honestly, I was going to work until the absolute end. But even if I didn't get mine, I was satisfied with the trip, seeing you be able to get yours, and just getting to be able to experience it.
Yeah, so. You got a taste of it. So the whole spot and stalk elk. It's like, we tried spot and stalk last year in South Dakota for mule deer. And now you got to do it for elk. Yeah,
it's just fun.
Yeah.
Like, I love calling elk. I like doing that too. But like this, I don't know. I'm really liking the glassing game.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you always feel like you're kind of in the game.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, when elk are quiet in the timber, it's difficult, but it feels like you're just aimlessly walking a lot of times, where now it's like you can always, glass country. And
it's like in your control out here.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're willing to walk all day, check every little pocket, all the different angles, it's like you can make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're not talking in thick timber, I'm like, you're just hoping to stumble upon something.
Yeah, and I mean, just from talking to the other people that we've run into here, and maybe they weren't telling us the whole truth, who knows, but it didn't seem like too many people were even finding elk or being able to get on them. So I was really just pumped that we were able to do that. But not saying we're great hunters by any means, but I will say we worked our asses off, and we just kept looking and kept trying and
when you're having a stalk a day, I'd call that success. We had one bad day, but I mean, we made it up for it on the other days where we had 2 stalks. But it's finding our own hidden pockets away from pressure, just overlooked spots. We did, for the most part, we weren't crazy deep. It's just like, well, if we go park at the road, go up and down over this ridge, nobody's looking at the backside. Everybody's either going past it or everybody's looking at the front side.
Yeah.
Worked out good for us.
Oh yeah. It definitely did, man. I'm pumped here. We were hoping to have some more celebratory drinks here, but didn't have it. You were supposed to get some in town.
Yeah.
So I've got my NA gluten-free beer here and a flask of whiskey and some little fireball shooters I found in my truck. So we have our little party going on here to be able to celebrate. But man, it was a really, really awesome trip. And anything else you think of that we missed on?
I don't think so.
I do got one story. When we were glassing from Rattlesnake Knob.
Oh yeah, yep.
So we were on Rattlesnake Knob. We call it that jokingly at first because it just was a bunch of rocks and there's a lot of rattlesnakes here, and it was hot out. And it's like, okay, probably a place we should watch for snakes. And you went off the backside of the mountain and you turn around and you yell at me. I'm like, what's he yelling at me for? And you're like, stop it. I'm like, what? And then you're like, oh, he can't talk and do that at the same time.
Yeah.
And there must have been a snake underneath. Rattling.
Yep. Yeah. I stepped right over a snake. I think it was like underneath a little rock ledge.
Yeah.
And then, so when I stepped over it, it sounded like it was coming from behind me. I looked back at you. I'm like, dude, this is a terrible joke.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, son of a gun. Did a big old loop around back to you.
Well, then, so you have trouble hearing, and what? You're almost deaf in one ear, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much deaf in my right ear.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh no, he has no idea where it's come from.
Yeah.
Like, What do I do?
I really did. I'm like, should I just start bunny hopping to get out of here, skipping?
Oh man, and how much cactus. I one day I have cactus in my ass and my knees and every part of my body. My hand, I pulled 30 little pieces of cactus out the one day. It's just like, it's unforgiving country. Big ass spiders. I hate spiders.
Yeah.
Every sage bush is connected by spider web. We saw our first black widow.
Yeah, I forgot about that one too.
Yeah.
A lot of spiders. Only one snake that we heard.
Yeah.
Who knows how many were within 10 feet of.
I'm going to say I bet we walked past more than that, but.
Yeah. No mountain lions. So we just carried around pistols for fun this whole trip.
Yeah. Yeah, except for I left mine because I got that it's a marsupial holster that goes on the bottom of a bino harness, and it clipped on the bottom of my Sitka harness, and I was having it there, and it's a nice place to be able to access it, but it sucks for stalks because your knees hit it because it hangs low and it can bang off things and make noise. So I just took it off, and then I didn't put a holster. I had a holster I could have put on my pack or whatever, and I didn't, so I just kind of stopped carrying it. And I'm down there like butchering this elk by myself in this coulee. I'm like, this would have been a good time to have this pistol handy, but.
And for some reason, like I was trying to shed weight because I knew I was gonna have to make like 3 trips, and then so I took my pistol off, and I get down there, I'm like, oh, Beau probably has his, and then here it is, like at 6:30 at night, we're on our last load, and like, none of us have pistols.
Yeah, and if you're listening and being like, what are you guys so worried about that for? Just go back and listen to the last podcast I had with Tyler from back in January, or Martonik's Western Hunting Adventures, I think it was called, and you can listen to his unluckiness with predators and how they are attracted to you. So there's a good reason for it.
There's a lot. I'll say there's even a story after that one. I'm like, it's twice a year I have an encounter.
What was the one after that?
The wolf that came running up to me when I was shed hunting in like March.
Oh,
yeah. So I was like,
one.
It was just like knee deep snow, snowshoeing. Like it was more or less like scouting for like where the elk, like the bulls are bedding, and so I'm just walking like this thick ridge, like bedding on my right side, feet on left, just looking for tracks. And it was just like one of those. I look up, and I think it was like a bad scenario because 30 seconds before I bumped the herd. And then I look up, and there's just like a wolf running full speed right at me on the same trail. But I think he was just after the elk, and I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I mean, he got to, I don't know, like 20, 30 yards, and that's when I pulled out my pistol and shot a couple times, and then he didn't even flinch. So I have a video of him just sitting 20 yards from me. He turned his back to me because he was looking at the elk herd running away, and he's just like looking over his shoulder right at me, and I'm sitting there with a pistol like, well, I already missed twice. I'm like, yep.
Oh. He's like,
he's not a threat.
No, you're good. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that one. I forgot that was after that. Yeah. So anyways, that was the whole thing there, but yeah, I think that about covers it, Tyler.
Yeah, good break strip.
Yeah, man.
2 for 2 dandy bulls.
Can't wait for the next time. Now it's time to go back and sit in a tree.
Yeah, don't envy you for that.
All right, buddy. Well, we're going to enjoy the rest of the night here. Appreciate everybody listening. And Tyler, thanks for all your help and for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for taking along and helping out.
Yeah, buddy. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.